There's none there. If there was, we wouldn't have had 4 referendums. The 4th referendum was the 1999 referendum for a republic, where they wanted us to approve COAC, which is the Commonwealth Organisation of Australian governments, including local government. That's the 4th. They need 3 and that's it. Can't have any more. They got 4. Wonder how many more they want. They can't have a referendum, and if there's anyone of Aboriginal descent here that's not against you, they can't have a referendum to add Aboriginals to our Constitution, because they're there. They're Australians of Aboriginal descent. Like it or lump it, that's how it is. They read your Constitution, it caters for everybody. There was restrictions on what they do until 1967, when 90.2% of every Australian said give them the same rights as us, and we did. And it should have been from Federation. It was just the bigotry of people before that stopped it. Now, if there's no local government in the state constitution, and there's none in the federal government, federal constitution, where do they get their authority from? From unlawful legislation. Now, we have, since 1999, a de facto republic in this country. They joined the United Nations by paying their way in. Billions and millions of dollars to become a member. Did we become a member? No. Did we have a referendum under 128? No. Can they even propose legislation at a federal level or a state level at present? No. Because a lot of things, one thing comes in as royal prerogative, they haven't got any. Now, when you look at what they're pulling at present with all their lies, they have created the ACT, Australian Capital Territory. How? Is it in our Constitution? No. Can they have a territory there? No. How do you create a territory in this country? You must have, according to section 125 of the Constitution, the seat of government must be inside the state of New South Wales. Part of it. More than 100 miles from the centre of Sydney. States that in the Constitution, very clear, which Canberra is, fits the bill, except for one thing. Canberra is just a town in New South Wales. How come it's got a parliament? Who told them they can have a parliament? They got one. They only have 2 senators, they're supposed to have 12, like the rest of the states and territories. So then you've got to have a look at the ACT. How did they create it? To separate that off from New South Wales as a separate territory, which is what they're claiming, they need a referendum under 123 of the Constitution, which says to increase or decrease the area or powers of a state requires a referendum in that state. Did they have one? No. Then they require a referendum under 128 to get permission of us to cut that out of that state, because it's one of the 6 originating states. Then the Northern Territory is the top half of South Australia. Was, is and remains that way until you go through a referendum under 123 in South Australia. Did that happen? No. Under 128? No. So what is it? Nothing. Part of South Australia. It reverts back to the original. Now when you look at your preamble, which is clause 9, it says, humbly relying on the blessing of Almighty God, we the people of New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria, Tasmania, South Australia and Western Australia join together in one indissoluble federation of the Commonwealth of Australia. You cannot dissolve it, you can't remove it, because you've got to petition the Queen to get permission to remove the letters patents to start off with, which ain't going to do that, there's too much money here for that. Then you've got to have a referendum in each state. Then you've got to have a referendum at federal level under 128. None of it's happened. For a politician to propose a republic is blatant treason against the people. Because the politicians cannot make legislation. They cannot propose legislation. They are simply legislatures with limited authority, limited by our Constitution, to debate and pass laws put together by the Governor-General at federal level and the governors of the states at state level. An argument came up in court where do the state governors get their powers from? Well, you can go back to section 72. It says that the Governor-General shall select all judges for the Federal Court and the High Court, as I said, and they must swear the oath of allegiance. Then in Quick-and-Garran it says, but this section does not by necessity apply to the states, because each state has a letters patent putting in place the office of Governor. Now, I've got a copy of those letters patents. They're not hard to get. You can get them from the archives of the State Library, or you can get them through Law or some crap, whatever it is. But better go to the State Library, you pay less for them, believe me, and they're clear. They were put in place with a letters patent and locked in. The Governor of the state is the highest authority in the state, must be obeyed. How does the Parliament rise up above the authority of the Governor, who's supposedly representing the Queen? Because he's representing the bush turkey, the corporate Queen of Australia. Doesn't exist in law. And they can't change it. They use the Statute of Westminster, which is in here. This is one of their nice little books put out in 1986, so I've got quite a bit of their literature, and it's lit up. Paragraph 4 of here wipes them out with their own garbage. It says, be it therefore enacted by the Queen and the Senate and the House of Representatives of the Commonwealth of Australia as follows. There wasn't any Commonwealth, they'd already dissolved it with the Unidroit Treaty when they gave the whole lot to Rome. That's what they say. But when they did that, and when they passed all the other laws, over 300 of them, in 1970, between 1972 and 1973, they got rid of the royal prerogative because there was no more royal authority. They removed it and replaced her authority with the bush turkey, the Queen of Australia, the corporate Queen. And that's where our problem started. And they used that to introduce local government and give them control over your land. Why? Because it no longer stood. That all the imperial law no longer stood. The royal prerogative was removed. Now, I say it goes back to 1907. There's a few people say it's only carries on from 1972, but that's not true either. In England at exactly the same time, because Hawke went to England before he brought, Whitlam went to England, and they arranged it. England joined the EU for trading purposes. At the same time as Australia produced the Royal Styles and Titles Act against a letters patent issued by the Queen, which says all of Her Majesty's realms can pass a law in relation to the royal style and the title of the Crown, except Australia and New Zealand, because of the constitutional constraints. And they said the Statute of Monopolies gives them that authority. But they brought the Statute of Monopolies into this country in 1942 with the Statute of Monopolies Adoption Act. Statute of Westminster, sorry. Now, when they did that, they backdated it to 1932 and knocked it out because you can't backdate legislation. It's automatically invalid. Can't do it. And they do it. The only way they get away with local government is because people keep paying them. You stop paying them, they go broke. They're corporations. I don't know about here, but in Geraldton, local CEO gets $360,000 a year. The executive officers get in excess of $250,000 a year. So 73% of the rates paid to the council go to the executive officers of the company. Who voted those executive officers in? Did you? No. Did I? Definitely not. I had nothing to do with it. The councillors, who voted them in? Nobody. Doesn't matter who you vote. I know in a particular group of people, over 300 voted for another person other than Shane Van Stein, the current mayor. But he still got in because they fudged the figures, which they do. And he's on $250,000 a year. And all he does is whinge and moan and carry on around the town, try and make himself a good little boy, which he's not. He's the local drug dealer, according to the local yokels. They all say he is. He obviously says he isn't. I haven't seen any evidence that says he is or isn't. So I'm just sitting on the fence with that one. But If local government is not in our constitution, it cannot be in the state constitution. If it's not in either, it can't be in our law. Our constitution is a book of constraints on the parliament. It gives nothing to the parliament except the authority in certain areas. There is no residual powers that change from before federation to federation because of the 4 months and 25 days gap. There was no law except imperial law. So there was no power for the Australia Act. There was no power granted by 5138, and yet they've been using it. They just forgot all the text of the rest of the section because it was convenient to say we got this power because we had it in Federation. No, you didn't. The Parliament of the Commonwealth of Australia didn't start until almost 7 weeks after the 1st of January 1901. So where did they have the power? No one had it. It's imperial law only. So when you understand that, you understand your constitution gives no power to the Parliament for local government, no control over our land, no power to tax it. And then you go to the High Court, Fijo versus the Northern Territory, HCA 58 of 1998, that shows you and tells you all the authority, what fee simple means, and the fact the government cannot tax your land, has no control. That refers back to a 1923 case where the New South Wales government tried to charge the Commonwealth land tax and rates on Crown land. It's the crowning right of the people because we're sovereign and supreme, not the government. And the High Court ruled against it. But in that 1923 case, you can get the reference out of Fijo versus Northern Territory, you will then see it refers to the text of what fee simple means. It alienates your land from the Crown. Gives you every authority of ownership except the fact you can't physically move it. But it also says you can lay waste to it. In other words, you can get your front end loaders in there and dig the whole lot out, right to the core of the earth, because that sounds stupid, and cart it away because you own it. And it says so when you read the text of Chalice Real Property. You have a huge ownership in fee simple. They're trying to say, no, you may own it, but the Crown still owns it. How does that work? How is it alienated from the Crown if the Crown still owns it? It doesn't, and it can't. And the only authority can ever be exercised over it is under the Crown. And when the Crown invited the people, where do they get their permission from? From the people. That's why they keep coming back to us trying to get permission to have their local government or their councils or whatever. You can have a council. What does the council do? Look after the roads, footpaths and the parks. Paid out a consolidated revenue. Everyone says, where do they get the money? Well, go and have a look at the fuel tax alone. Go and work it out. The Association of Local Drivers of Australia in 1998 paid $1.83 trillion in tax without the GST. That's just in tax on fuel. And it's in excess of $3 trillion a year. Well, how do they get the GDP as $998 billion? Somebody can't work out the maths properly. It's just smoke, mirrors and lies. But when they brought the GST in 1996, they said they'll get rid of all the other taxes. Did they? No. They loaded them all up on cars and everything and pushed them overseas. And everyone says, no, they didn't push them overseas. Yes, they did. They took out all the import duties. It was cheaper to build them in Thailand and other countries and bring them in here, destroy our industries, than force them to stay here. All they had to do was reduce the tax. How much tax is on a new car? Well, before I left the police force in 1992, they were paying $8,000 for a V8 Commodore licensed on the road with all the light sirens and everything, the police were. And they were $38,000 to buy. What was the rest? Tax. Tax, that's what it was. Why can't they do it? They sell cars in America for half of what they sell them here. They can bring out cars from America and land them here cheaper than you can buy a new V8 Commodore. Why is that? Because we've got a pack of crooks for government. And then, and the church people need to understand this, in 1996, They went through and they, from the 721,000 registered corporations in this country, registered companies, they brought it up to 2.4 million. They registered all the charities, all the churches and everything, gave them ABN numbers, and they said, if you speak out from the pulpit against the government, we'll backdate your GST. I tried to talk to a few of them, they don't want to listen. Section 51, subsection 2 of the Constitution says any law in relation to tax shall deal with one subject to tax. I had two body corporate, Blue Technologies and Highway Technologies, for about 15 years. I never did a BAS statement, never paid GST. I deducted it from any money I had to pay in tax to the government. I deducted the accountant's fees because it's for them, not for me. They want it done by an accountant, they pay it. I never signed them because I didn't do it, the accountant did. People won't stand up. Yeah, I'm an aggro old fart. I can't stand the government for the lies they tell. I was brought up to call a spade a spade. You people need to do the same. Tell them to get the hell off your property. Last time they come to the seizure and sale order on my property, I took it off and held it up to the light, and where the JP was had been inked out, and you hold it up, you can see it, there never was a signature there. So I ripped it up and get off my property. That's how you treat it. The cops come with a warrant, not one of them are signed lawfully. They have a black mark where the signature of the JP goes, hold it up to the sun, you can see it, it's never been signed. You cannot wipe it out with it by inking it. And then it says on there, this warrant authorises the undersigned person. Where is he? Not there. And the law says they must give you a lawful warrant to enter your property. Was that warrant issued under the Crown? No. They removed the Crown out of this state on the 1st of January 2004 with the Acts Amendment Repeals Court and Legal Practice Act, Section 8. Section 5 made all lawyers officers of the court. Cop that for a conflict of interest. You employ a lawyer who works for the court to defend you in the court against them. This is the problem we have. People have to learn, listen, and tell the government one thing. Shut up. Next thing, get the hell off my property. Why? Because I said so. No warrant, no right of entry. No Crown, no authority. That's it. Learn your Constitution. Now I've got to cut it off because we're going to run out of the video, and I want to leave it there. I am going to come to Perth in a couple of months because there's a hell of a lot more you have to learn about your rights, your ability to tell the government to get off your property, get away from you, leave you alone. And one of the things is personal taxation. There is no such thing. You cannot be taxed on your wages. And there's a lot to do with taxation on your cars, which is your licence and everything else. All lies. You can get around the councils on one, which is your dog licence, because the local government act says your dogs have to be registered. So you go and register it with the vet, get it chipped by the vet, tell them they send it to the council. Your dog's registered. Why do you have to pay the council every year? Use it against them. Learn your law, apply it to them, and don't be scared they can't hurt you. They can yell at you. In the court, I called the judge a magistrate a traitor and a liar and said, you retained the treason, you got no jurisdiction. He kept looking at his clock, looking back at me and saying, have you got anything else to say? I said, yeah, you're a traitor, you got no jurisdiction. That went on for over an hour, and then he got up and walked out. Came back the next day. In the end, I had him so tied up, he dropped his pen, started shaking, got up and ran out of the court. So I said, your green snot constitution is going to put you behind bars for the rest of your life. You personally. And that's when you really start shaking and bolted out of the court. You've got to grow some guts and do something and tell them, get out of our court. You're not officers of the Crown. No Crown, no rights, no authority. Okay? Let's leave it there.